Hey everybody, Mr. Musak here again, and this is Bowie. He's here to help us out today. We're looking at the Industrial Revolution again, and not just what happened in the Industrial Revolution, but also looking at the social and the national changes. This week we'll look at in a couple of videos here. So let's start looking at first off the idea there's two actual industrial revolutions. First off, we have the one we talked about before break, the invention of factories and steam power, mass production, cloth, and use of iron. And so basically kind of the first industrial revolution is how things get started in terms of factories and those kind of things. Um, we also have a second one. This first part ends around 1850, and we start seeing more changes happen after that. And our changes afterwards are real new, different kind of system here. First off, it's new kind of goods that are created. The first big part is steel. Instead of using iron, iron is really brittle. It breaks pretty easily. But we have the idea of the use of steel. That means you take iron, you add carbon to it, make it stronger, and there's actually better ways to make this called the Bessemer system. The English guy, and last name of Bessemer, who created a system where you took a lot of hot air and carbon, injected into hot iron, and made steel. Also, we start seeing chemicals being used for things. New chemicals, petroleum, especially oil, kerosene used for lamps, all those kind of things become a big part of the Second Industrial Revolution as well. Especially in Germany, we see chemicals start being used. Electricity is the other big thing. Yesterday we talked a lot about electricity, and obviously electricity's been around for a long, long time, but here we start actually harnessing the use of electricity. Not only do we start making electric motors that can run machines, so you get rid of steam engines, those kind of things, but also start find ways to create electricity using power plants and generators to make electricity. And so that's kind of new things we see happen there too. Other new inventions come around as well. Save time, save energy. The car, big one. Looking at the video camera and all these other inventions that come around we talked about in class on Tuesday, all these new advances that happen are another big part of the Second Industrial Revolution. And lastly, we have even bigger mass production. You have larger factories, better factories, the assembly line, all those new ideas that come around in terms of the second revolution means that there's more and more mass production, more and more goods. That also means that we have more stores. And now you start having the first ever malls, the first ever department stores that get created in France. And it's a bigger way for people to get stuff. The small one-person shop kind of dies away, and we have the big store that gets created. And so it's kind of another big change here in terms of the second industrial revolution. Now, one of the guys who saw what was happening was a guy named Karl Marx. He's got an awesome beard, first of all, but he was a German sociologist. He studied people and how they got along with each other. And him and his kind of partner in crime, his colleague Frederick Engels, wrote a paper called the Communist Manifesto. A lot of people have heard of communism and think just something in Russia, but really it originates with Karl Marx in Germany in 1840s. And what Karl Marx really studied, as you guys know from presentations in class, was the idea of factory life and classes. He really said the whole world breaks down to a giant class struggle. It comes down to the owners of production, the guys who own the factories, those kind of things, oppressing the workers. So it's kind of like a life of oppressors and the oppressed. How he breaks this down, he talks about basically becoming two classes in the world inside of capitalism. Kind of the laissez-faire idea, like talk about Adam Smith, all that kind of stuff happening. And my dog is chewing on my hand here. Um, he kind of said that kind of developed two classes. You have the bourgeoisie, who are kind of the middle class. These would be the factory owners. These would be the people who control machines, wages, government people, all kind of stuff in there. Okay, and they oppress the workers. And on the bottom side, you have the proletariat, the people who work, people who feed everybody. And so they had to work for the bourgeoisie. They get a lot of low wages. They cannot control production. They cannot get ahead. And so they're going to be forever impressed. Kind of this little picture up here. At the very bottom, most of the people, we work for you, we feed you, all kind of stuff. And at the very top, you go up here was kind of like, the military, we shoot you. The government, we fool you, we rule you. That kind of thing is kind of what it ends up coming down to. And so that's kind of where everything kind of rolls into that way. Now, what Marx really wanted, he wanted the world to be a violent revolution. He said the working class need to rise up take out the owners, the factory owners, take out the rich people, and basically control the government. He said it should be a dictatorship ruled by the working class, and they need to be in charge. Eventually, he wanted to kind of create a situation where everyone worked together, and there was no more social class, essentially making it a commune. So a situation where everyone's going to work for their best job and get paid what they need. You can't make it a system where everyone works together without social class. There wouldn't be a rich and poor in Marx's world, where all just people doing their jobs together, what it would come down to. And so it's kind of where Marx wanted things to go. We'll talk more about Marx in class on Thursday. Now, another thing that develops as these factories get bigger and bigger is the idea of the trade union. Um, workers had tried to negotiate with factory owners, but when you negotiate before, you kind of got fired. The idea here came the idea of power numbers, where if all the workers got together and worked together, they could then negotiate for all the workers. And so they would try to get together and say, okay, how can we find a way to make sure that all the workers get the rights they need? And so they find different ways to do that. And one of the biggest ways, obviously, is to strike, when all the workers decide not to work until they get what they want. And that way, no work gets done. The owner is losing money until he or she kind of gives up and gives people what they need. And so originally, strikes were illegal. In some countries like Russia and Germany, the military is brought in to break strikes up. But eventually, by 1870s, strikes are legal in England. And they can strike to try to help workers get better lives for themselves. And eventually, we also call this era the era of mass society. Essentially, people living closer together and people kind of living in a way so that they get have it's kind of a big mass population. Now, because of this, we see urbanization. That means that more and more people are now living in cities because of factory jobs. Less people live in rural areas, and more people are living in urban areas. By the end of the 1800s, 60% of England lives in urban areas. England and for that part, Europe for that part, lives in urban areas. As my dog chews on my sweatshirt strings. And less people are living in the country. Now, because of that, you see cities get really big, cities get really nasty, and they have to find ways to improve. The biggest thing is finding clean water for people. Cholera was a terrible, terrible thing at this time. A disease that was created by contaminated drinking water. And one of the things that people had to look at was how can we make better water. And so they made water pipes. They found ways to actually bring clean water into cities so people didn't get sick from it. Part of it was also by creating sewer systems, ways for human waste to not be placed into clean water. They also want issues of public heating, ways to use gas heating, and public transportation to let people get around. And all these ways they made cities a much better place to live versus what they were before. Now, with this also came new social classes. And as you kind of look at this, you have this kind of new elite. About 5% of the population had over half the money. These would be like the big factory owners, the big government rulers, and the quote-unquote old money. People that had all kinds of money from old history. That kind of just been passed down from them. Now, let's say 5% owns about half the money. That's a lot of people there, okay? In the middle, there are new kind of white-collar jobs, lawyers, government officials, architects, accountants, etc., who would also kind of be kind of the middle ground people in everything. Kind of these new government, new factories got going, they kind of created a need for more jobs now, a different kind of job. Not everyone was a factory worker. Other jobs that were needed as well. And then the very bottom is lower class. About 80% of the population was the lower class. Your farmers, your factory workers who didn't get paid a lot, lived in pretty much bad conditions, and that was what most of the people were. And so you kind of see about 15% is in that middle class, and 8% is the lower class. So definitely a big class change between the two sides. The other time we're going to talk about this in class on Wednesdays, the idea of women's rights. Now, as times change, women's jobs change as well. We do talk about seeing women in the factories in the early 1800s. Things change. As new laws get passed, there are new jobs kind of created for women. They're still low-paid jobs, but they're not as brutal as the jobs we talked about earlier. Things like secretaries, typists, clerks, all kind of non-factory jobs that are created for women. But also we see gender roles created here as well. Basically, kind of the idea that the man is the quote unquote wage earner and the woman stays home becomes a big part of this now. And part of it comes down because of changes uh, in laws. There are laws that limit hours for women working, hours that new laws that stop child labor, and so now it kind of says, well, if kids aren't working, women's got to stay home and take care of them there. And so all these new kind of ideas come in this way in terms of trying for women's rights. And this idea of this gender role of kind of what men and women should be doing kind of starts getting created in the next time in Europe. And now also coming after this is the idea of feminism, basically a push then for women's rights. A lot of things are kind of happening in Europe at this point for women that weren't very good. Property-wise, women were not allowed to own property if they were married. So when women got married, a lot of times their property was owned by their husband. Job-wise, women weren't paid the same for the same kind of job. They weren't given the same opportunities for jobs, and that wasn't seen as being very fair either. And last thing was voting. In European countries, women did not have the right to vote. In the United States as well, women did not have the right to vote. And so we start seeing some women, starting the upper and middle class and then becoming all classes, try to start getting the fight to get different rights. And so the biggest one, first of all, was the right to vote. A lot of women figured if they could get the right to vote, the rest of things would kind of fall in line afterwards. That first you get the right to vote, you make political changes, and then you get better jobs, pay, all those kind of things afterwards. Emmeline Pankhurst, which we will see a presentation on her in class, and her daughters after were some of the biggest leaders in this in England. In fact, they actually got kind of violent. Women would chain themselves to fences. They'd throw things at police, riot in a way, if you will, just to get the right to vote. And eventually, after World War I in England, women get the right to vote. And then also we see the same happen here in the United States in 1920. And so I'm kind of look at it that way. We'll talk more about that in class. Guys, what we have in this video, guys, we have all the social changes that happen. We have two classes developed because of industrialization. We have the idea of Karl Marx come up here in terms of kind of the two classes that developed, his proletariat and bourgeoisie and what he thinks should happen because of it, and the idea of communism that comes around. And lastly, we kind of see how women's rights change a little bit. We'll talk about more of these in class, ladies and gentlemen. These are due Thursday, April 10th, and also we have presentations this week as well. Thanks for listening. This is Bruce Bowie saying bye. Thanks a lot, guys.